and welcome to All of the Classics podcast. My guest for this episode is Laura Leibowitz. She is the president of the Jack Benny Fan Club, a fan club she started as a kid. Now she runs the website and is the moderator for the International Jack Benny Fan Club group on Facebook. We talked a couple of weeks ago. Yes, I am sorry for this podcast being late. So we touched on Les Moonves, and he has since left CBS. We not only talk about Jack, but we talk about Doctor Who and the old studio system, and even more modern stars like Tom Hanks and Leonardo DiCaprio. Now, I did have some audio issues, but I've tried my best to resolve it. So if I could hear your input, or if you have any advice for me, please enjoy. First of all, I found out you were an Indiana resident for a little while.
A little while.
Yeah.
I sometimes say 6 years one night.
I live in Indiana, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's where I am right now. What?
Where are you located?
I am currently located at South Bend, so near Notre Dame and all that stuff. Yes.
Yep. Actually, George Balzer, one of Jack's writers, donated his papers to Notre Dame. So, and I haven't had a chance to go through them. In fact, I've gone through some of them, but. Anyhow, so if you're in the neighborhood, you might want to stop by and see if those are available.
Yes. I might need his, how do you spell that?
Oh, George, Balzer, Balzer.
Okay. I will try and look that up. That's awesome.
Cool. So,
first of all, how did you find Jack Benny?
Quick question. Do you want me to answer this as though I'm talking to you, a knowledgeable Jack Benny fan, or as though I'm talking to somebody who may know very little about Jack?
Very little about Jack.
Okay. So, there was this cartoon called The Mouse That Jack Built that was done by Warner Brothers. And the original vision was that they might be able to do kind of like an animated version of resurrecting the radio show, because it was done, 57, 58. And so it had all of Jack's characters. Well, not all, but a lot. Mm-hmm. Even Mary came out to do the voice for her own character. And Rochester and Don as a big fat mouse and whatnot. And so all the characters are mice, and it's kind of unusual because right at the end of it, there's this live-action shot of Jack waking up from a dream, and he says, "Oh, isn't that, crazy, Mary and me, two little mice trapped inside a cat, as though he's having a dream." And then two little animated mice run across the floor, and he does the famous Jack Benny, stare into the camera. So when I was very small, I'd seen that, and it kind of caught my eye because it was a little bit different. And then actually I was in Grand Rapids, Michigan at the time, and there was a station out of Detroit. We had just gotten cable television. They were showing the old television shows, and so I started watching those. And then I was on the phone with an adult friend in California, and I said, "Oh, I know so many people who like Jack Benny. I should start a Jack Benny fan club." And she said, "Well, it's better to light one candle than to curse the darkness." So, I was 10 years old. I had nothing better to do. So I started the Jack Benny fan club, and then finally, a couple years later, got promoted in Jay Hickerson's Hello Again, because, this is back in the Stone Age before the internet. And, it just was kind of, you had to find the right audience and somebody who had the distribution list like Jay did. And, then start getting more members, and it just went from there, so.
That's cool. That is really cool. I was going to ask how you became president. That was cool. Was there a fan club before? Or...
Well,
No, go
You
ahead.
know, of course, there's the bit on Jack's show where you have two little old ladies come up on stage and say, don't Mr. Benny, don't you know who we are? It's, oh my goodness, it's the president and vice president of the Jack Benny fan club. And then if you go back to the movie It's in the Bag, um, Fred Allen, of all people, comes into Jack's alleged apartment with a bouquet of flowers and announces himself as the president of the Jack Benny fan club. Um, and for a long time, I thought there wasn't one, but it turns out I found in Jack's own scrapbooks that one copy of a little newsletter, and I republished it in our newsletter a year or two ago. That there was a gal who had started in like the early 30s a Jack Benny fan club. So, God bless her. I had a sister out there somewhere. But yeah, as far as I know, we're let's put it this way: we have the trademark, but Jack belongs to everybody. So
Yeah.
I can't claim exclusivity on it.
What does the job of president entail? Like, what do you? I know you do the newsletter. Is there other duties involved?
Yeah, I moderate the Facebook group that we have that's very active, and I know you're a part of.
Mm-hmm.
And also the web page. I don't do as much with the web page as I used to, but it's there. It's another repository of information and fulfilling the occasional. Well, I don't get too many audio library orders anymore, but video library orders, and seeking out people and doing interviews and like you said, publishing the newsletter, running the monthly chat that we have. And also, it's we'll give you a scoop on this, that I'm because it's in the newsletter that's at the printers right now, so it hasn't gone out yet. But I'm working on trying to pull together at least a base for like the ultimate Jack Benny database. Because we have so many phenomenal researchers on that Facebook page. Yeah. And they come up with all kinds of stuff, and it's like, you know what? This is way better if we let everybody have the fun. And so I'm trying to lay down the base information of, vaudeville dates and so forth. That, I'm hoping that it'll evolve into being this kind of like comprehensive thing where we can put all those photos and all those variety, articles that Don is always coming up with, and your stuff and Kathy's stuff and Garth's stuff and whatnot. And, let's just put it out there in a place where people can see it and research it and learn from it and enjoy it and, stuff like that. So that's kind of the next frontier for me right now.
That would be magnificent. And I mean, I know that you said you don't really do the website as much anymore, but before, like, was it Antenna TV that carries Jack?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So before Antenna TV, I found Jack on well, first I started seeing his name pop up in like celebrities like biographies, and I was like, well, who is he? And then I found Johnny Carson had like a Johnny Carson's and Friends, and I found him there, and that's when I first saw Jack. But then I was obsessed, and I went on your website, and that was the resource I had before it came on Antenna TV. It came on maybe a year or two later, but that was it was an incredibly exciting time because I found it just before it was released again, and I was like, that's awesome.
Yay!
But so for those of people that have never visited the website, what does the website offer right now?
Well, we have the overall Jack Benny biography and the listing of everything that we have in our audio and video library. lots of photos. We also have a link to an extensive bulletin board that we used to have, which I guess in calling it a bulletin board even, dates it that much more. Push forum, discussion board, whatever you want to call it. But Facebook seems to be so much more available to so many different people. We have such a good group over there. It's like, if somebody's got to log in there, then they can post something. But I haven't even looked at it myself to see if anybody's posted. So, we host the monthly web chat, which is not per se on the website, but information about it is on the website. And, once in a while I'll have something to put out there, like, speaking of George Walter, that I have a copy of the unpublished autobiography that he had written. And it's in 2 halves, and we've published the first half. I'm waiting on the okay from his son to publish the second half. And, we just decided, okay, we're not looking to make money or anything on this. So, I put it out there on the website. So you never know. Sometimes stuff like that appears up there.
That's really cool. Yeah. Did you used to have a guest book on the website? I seem to remember that.
Oh yeah, still do.
Okay,
yeah,
cool. You'll see you'll see a 15-year-old me signing it somewhere in there.
That's great. Yeah, no, it's funny because I had forgotten about that at the moment because nobody signed it in a little while. But once in a while, I go in there and process any new signatures that I have. So, yeah, that's great. Actually, there's a gentleman who actually was on our bulletin board forum, whatever you want to call it, as Z.E. Jack Benny Kid. And he started when he was like 10. And, was all into Jack Benny. And it's like, okay, I've been around for almost 39 years doing this right now. So, and that's literally a true number, not just a gag. And he's now a filmmaker in his own right, and a very talented one at that. In fact, he sent me a link to a short that he had done called Twombly, and after Gene Twombly, Jack's sound man, but it's in name only is the connection, and it's a beautiful little noir short that he did, very much in the genre of the time. So yeah, it's great to. I'm making myself sound really old now. To be able to see, fans of Jack Benny, come into the fold at surprisingly young ages. I call you all sub 39ers, and having been a sub 39er myself for quite a while, I'm now 49, and. And I'm not staying at 49. I'm turning 50 next year. So, and just watch you all grow up and go different places and get married and, whatnot. It's great. It's, Jack entertains many generations.
He definitely does. He stays relevant through it all. So I've seen some of the comments on this story before, but I haven't really encountered this story more than once or twice. I saw that you commented on how Jack got his signature move of covering his face beforehand. How did that come about?
Well, I'll tell you what, you tell me the stories that you've heard, and I'll fill in the details.
I heard that Jack was backstage or something, and Mary came in, saw that like a girl had like run in and was like on Jack, and she like scratched him, and he had to like go on stage and kind of cover it up like that.
There's a few different versions. One is so the one that you told, the way I've heard it, or the way. In these showbiz stories, it's like, okay, this story is a beautiful little package. And so in some ways I believe it the most, and in some ways I believe it the least, because it's like, oh, this sounds like somebody told it and then wanted to make it a good story, that that Mary was sitting in Jack's dressing room and was kind of behind the door where, the door would open, you wouldn't immediately see her. And that one of the chorus girls in Great Temptations, that particular showman was rather notorious for, they used to have naked women on stage, or naked people on stage, and they would do in vaudeville posing acts, but they would just be simulating like classic statues or whatnot. But he actually had the girls move around, so it was notorious, that not so much because they were naked, but because they were actually moving and possibly jiggling and so forth. So this is the kind of environment that you had around that show. And so one of the chorus girls runs in with her breast exposed and supposedly painted up with lipstick as a pig, and yells "oink oink" as she comes through the door, and not seeing Mary behind it. And Jack, she was expecting Jack to fall on the floor laughing, and she looks at him and sees the blood kind of draining out of his face, and then realizes that Mary's there, and it's like, oh, sorry, wrong door. I'm making that up, and leaves, and then Mary scratches her fingers down Jack's face. So, and there's also versions where Jack gets a call from one of his girl-in-it reports, and, rather than saying, sorry, I'm married, he says, sorry, I can't see you tonight, or something like that, and that drew Mary's ire. And then the completely, G-rated family version is that Jack was trying to go on stage without his violin, and he was so used to having that to hang on to that he didn't know what to do with his hands, and so he just started doing gestures and so forth. Yeah, exactly. What do I do with my hands? And that he developed all of those. So which one is true? I don't know. Take your pick.
Yes. There's actually very little known kind of about how Jack actually got his start in radio. Do we know anything more than like Ed Sullivan, like him going on for Ed Sullivan's show?
I have to hand it to the fan club members that they've actually found a few clippings of when Jack was in Los Angeles. He was on the occasional, radio show. And so, even though, like I said about showbiz stories, the Ed Sullivan story is a nice, pat little thing. It isn't quite as clean as that. And that you do have the occasional, Jack emceeing whatever, back in 1929 or something, but who knows how many sets were out there. Then again, Amos and Andy was very popular by that time, so maybe there were a few listeners. But yeah, basically that he was in Earl Carroll's Vanities. Well, let me back up a second and give you a little more information. So the reason Jack was in Los Angeles was that MGM's Irving Thalberg, their boy wonder, had put him under contract. But he just wasn't using him very much. And Jack was bored and playing golf and going swimming and so forth. In fact, here's something that I don't talk about very often. I just realized that with all the political kerfuffle right now over whether there's a recording of our current president saying the N-word, I realized that I have a letter of Mary written to Julia Sinekin where she uses the N-word.
Oh, wow.
Because Jack is swimming so much and spending so much time in the sun golfing that she says he looks like that. I have to pull the letter because I haven't looked at it in a while. But anyhow, that all aside, so Jack isn't getting a lot of screen time, and finally he's like, I'm done. Talks Thalberg out of releasing him from his contract, and goes back to Earl Carroll's Vanities on the East Coast. So he's in the show, and then the show is going to go on tour. And at that point, um, Jack says, "You know what? I'm going to stay in New York and try and find an opportunity to get into radio." And Jack himself, in his autobiography, says something about because I think the show went on the road towards the end of 1931, and that um, he makes some comment like the winter of 1931 was a very long and cold one because he was looking for this opportunity, and Mary had been the one who had been sitting at home listening to the radio and saying, "Jack, I think you should get into this." And then he had the opportunity with Ed Sullivan, and then that brought him to the attention of Canada Dry, and the rest is history. So
That's pretty cool. It's never as cut clean as like, oh, he just got this opportunity and whoosh, So that's really cool. I didn't know this until recently, but I found an interview where you said that Sadie Marks or Mary Livingston was involved in radio before Jack. How did that happen?
yeah, I've found that tidbit in reading a delightful book from Benny Rubin. But once again, Benny Rubin is some of the source of some of those showbiz stories, and it's like, okay, I'll read him talking about something, and it's like, okay, I know that's not true because he's talking about like Jack changing from Ben Benny to Jack Benny in 1924 or something. It's like, no, I have the ad from Variety in 1920 of him announcing that name change. So anyhow, whatever. So Benny Rubin was doing an audition show, trying to get his own show in, I think it was 1928, and he needed a girl foil, to just read the script, and that the pilot of that show was going direct out on the air, and Mary ended up being his second banana on that, and it didn't go beyond that because the sponsor had some rather harsh words for how he thought it went. But Benny Rubin had this great story of while they were in the studio doing that, Jack sitting out in the car, listening on the rather posh car radio that they had at the time, and giving his opinion of how it went. So anyhow, but that's how Mary actually got on the air before Jack did.
Wow.
Yeah.
You talked about how quickly, I believe you said how quickly Jack really became popular. He started in 1932, and he, believe I heard like an announcement that Don was saying that he was voted most popular comedian on the radio, and he beat out people like his friend George Burns and Gracie Allen and like even Ed Wynn. How was he able to do that when a lot of his characters at that time were not really established?
That's an excellent question. I have not been asked that before. So good for you. Congratulations. I don't know that he got that necessarily in 32.
Okay.
But because if Don was saying it, Don joined him in 34. Okay. And maybe actually by that facts. Time, sorry.
No, maybe there's some facts wrong there.
That's all right. Because Don joined with the General Tire, I think, and then continued on to Jello, if I'm remembering that correctly. Feel free to double check me on that. I've sometimes joked that I write books so that I don't have to carry all this information around in my head. So anyhow, that Jack actually started to kind of create some of the characters, or really, I guess I have to give credit to Harry Kahn and Al Boasberg, who were his writers at the time. That if you go back and look at the scripts from 1932, then you have Mary coming on initially as the fan from Plainfield, um, and then Jack hires her as his secretary, and then they have this beautiful little romance, between the two of them, and it's just heartwarming to read that. But remember also the structure of the shows at that time was not what we all remember it as being. If you go back to the first Canada Dry show, where you have a little bit of comedy and then a whole bunch of songs,
Yeah.
and so there isn't as much opportunity to develop the characters at that point. But it does start back then, and even before you get like a Phil Harris, then you have other band leaders. You have Frank Black, who again doesn't necessarily. He's not Dennis Day or Kenny Baker, but he was beloved, and in fact, when he left the Benny Show, there's columns that you can find about, oh, will Jack Benny survive the departure of Frank Parker? Yeah, it could be, So I think Jack survived the departure of Frank Parker better than Frank Parker did. But anyhow, so there's some elements of that. The characters really do kick into high gear about the time that Morrow and Beline come in, and so they take all these things that Harry Conn had started and kind of leave the George Bernard Shaw and Greta Garbo's big feet jokes in the past, and then really start developing the characters. And does that answer your question? I'm not sure that I did.
No, I mean it's a good answer, because I mean there's not really much that I could see from like how that happened so quickly. So it. I mean, it is what it is. We'll find more information, I'm sure.
Well, also, to a degree, Jack was just different from most other people because George and Gracie were a duo. Ed Wynn was the perfect fool. And Eddie Cantor, in a similar vein, ask Michelle Malick to be sure on this, but I think he was doing a little bit more with movies at that time than radio. So, yeah, it's like, okay, before Dawn there was, oh, crap.
Yeah, who was before Dawn?
You had a whole bunch of people. You had Alois Sabrilla, and I'm trying to remember, there was a George who appears on Jack's Shower of Stars 39th birthday and says, I was Jack's first announcer. It's like, no, you weren't. But
I'm trying to remember.
There were.
Because, I'm sure if I hear them, I'll be like, oh, yeah, but...
Yeah, and same here. I mean, it's like, okay, Alois Sabrilla has an unusual enough name that one sticks with me, but anyhow. So yeah, there you go.
So I have heard that when you I don't know when you interviewed Dennis Day and Phil Harris, but I have heard that you did. How did those interviews come about, and do you have the stories of what happened during them?
Dennis I got right after he had been diagnosed with Lou Gehrig's disease, also known as ALS, and he just clearly wanted to talk. And in fact, I cut a 500 level statistics class. I got my degree in mathematics to interview him, and fortunately I was friends with the teacher, and I took her aside afterwards, and I didn't just cut the class entirely. I came in late, and I took her aside afterwards, and I said, Pat, I think her name was, I just wanted to apologize for being late, and the reason that I was late is that I was interviewing Dennis Day, and she was of an appropriate vintage, and she looked at me and said, good for you. I would have too. But yeah, Dennis was wonderful. That when I transcribed the interview, I'm not doing that great of a job, but Dennis knows all the stories that we would want to hear, and so he just tells them. So you get like one line from me, and then 2 solid pages from him, and he was so amazing. It's the him talking about, well, God never gives you more than you can handle, and just being really optimistic about it, and yeah, he was just really really inspiring, and I often still think of him, not him in character, but him as the person that I was interviewing, and it's like, oh yeah, we'll get through this, because remember what Dennis said, God never gives you more than you can handle. um, so that was Dennis. I'm sad to say that I never actually met him, but had the opportunity on the phone. And Phil, I was in Los Angeles. It wasn't my first time in Los Angeles, but it was the first time that I had my driver's license. So I had a little bit more freedom of movement, and I was actually up at George Balzer's house the day before, talking with him, and then um, I had told him that I was going to see Phil Harris the next day. And how did I get Phil Harris's information? I cannot remember. I just lucky, I guess. I don't know. I'd have to go back and see if I even still have any of the correspondence from that time of to figure out how I got to him. But he was living out in Palm Desert at the time, ironically enough, in a house that used to belong to Bill Morrow. And Bill Morrow actually was kind of the prototype for the character that Phil Harris played, that he was the, more hard drinking, woman chasing, guy. He was living the life of Phil Harris's character, without being married to Alice Faye. So it was kind of cool to be in this legacy house, and see gold records on the wall, and my favorite story about that interview is is that my mom and I had this long running joke of, oh, if you're ever with Phil Harris and he offers you a drink, watch out. So he said to me, would you like some iced tea? And I said, yes, I'd love some iced tea, because we're in Palm Desert and it's hot. And so he goes to the fridge and he gets an iced tea and brings me this lovely glass of iced tea. And I have my mother's voice running in my head, and I look down at the iced tea I had in both hands at the same time. And I looked up at him and I said, there's not vodka in this. And he looks at me totally straight and says, no, you want some? And he definitely was stocked to be able to provide that if I wanted it. But no, I just said, no, that's all right, and it was actually a fabulous glass of iced tea, as I recall. But Phil was one of those funny interviews where it's like not an interview. It isn't quite like Dennis, where it's like you ask a question and then he just knows that to tell you all these stories. With Phil, it's more one of these where you just kind of come in. He's already started talking, and then you just turn on the tape player and put it in front of him, and once in a while laugh, and he just goes from one place to another, or you'll comment on something. And I actually got George Balzer had asked me to have Phil give him a call, and I have the tape of him giving George Balzer a call, and he starts a conversation with something like, yeah, I'm still alive. I can't die until I figure out where to bury my liver. It's like, damn, I'm hearing an improv Jack Benny program right in front of me. This is great. But yeah, that was a fabulous day. That was definitely one of the highlights. One of the days when you pinch yourself and say, wow, did I really dream? Did I just dream that, or did that actually happen? So.
Wow, he was very quick on his toes then with like the comebacks and stuff.
Oh yeah, they knew their characters. They knew what fit with those characters. And the hilarious thing, he was talking about how everybody's character was like a magnified version of themselves, and he said, if I drank as much as they pretended that I did, I wouldn't be able to stand up.
No.
And
he'd be dead.
It's like, okay, this is true, but I have plenty of stories from people, like somebody was driving Phil to the airport one time, and he had, like, I don't know, a glass of bourbon on the rocks in his hand or something, and he didn't totally finish it, so he hands it to the guy who drove him to the airport, and the guy says, well, what do I do with this? And he said, drink it, it's good for you. It's just, so Phil was Phil, and Mary was Mary, and Dennis was, an adult and so forth. But, this story about Yes Please, that when he was auditioning for the part, and Jack's in the booth, and he's down talking with the accompanist, and Jack comes over the mic and says, oh, Dennis, and he just automatically in the audition turned around and said, yes, please. And it was just natural for him, and I think that's part of the reason that the characters work so well, is that you don't have anybody playing somebody that doesn't, share plenty of traits with themselves, with the exception of Jack.
Yeah.
So anyhow, okay, I've rambled enough about it.
No, it's amazing. It's amazing because, like, that's amazing. So
even I'm amazed by it. It's like, like I said,
it's like someone else did it, right?
Yeah, it's like, did I just invent that, or did that actually? Oh no, there's a picture of me with Phil Harris. I guess it did happen.
Oh my gosh, that is amazing! I need to see that picture.
I gotta find it.
Do you have like the transcripts still somewhere of like those interviews?
Oh yeah, and actually, that's something that I plan to put out on the database, because they've been published sometimes a couple of times in the Jack Benny Times over the years, and I figure, okay, I've never been in this to make money, and saying, okay, we've got such a phenomenal group of people who can all contribute to the knowledge base. Heck, let me just put this all out there and have people enjoy it and look it up and reference it, and who knows, Jack may end up being the best researched historical figure ever. It's so many of us dedicated to finding, following what I call the 80-year breadcrumb trail.
Right.
So yeah,
that's really cool, and I gotta give you like mad props for like the Facebook group, because it is one of the most active groups that I've ever seen. And sometimes the moderators, they'll post something like once a year, and it's just like the Facebook group dies. And like, you've been doing this for so long, and like your passion hasn't like gone out. It's still there, and like, I think Jack would be a really good, well-researched candidate, because I've never seen a more active Facebook group, with the exception of, though I don't know if you're part of the What's My Line group, but that's a pretty active group.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's funny, because sometimes I think about, well, I feel rather odd being put under a microscope. Once in a great while, with all due respect to anybody who said this to me, and my appreciation for the spirit in which it was said, or which I assume it was said, comes to me and says, well, I'm president of the Laura Leibowitz fan club. It's like, okay, that person you should run away from as fast and as far as you can. Generally because, honestly, the way that they've come to that, and obviously I can't generalize to everybody, because there's some people who I know are really sweet and have said that, that very often people will have created this persona that they expect you to be.
Yeah.
and it's like the woman who wakes up every morning and looks up and says, "Well," and it's like, "Oh, please." And listens to at least 5 Jack Benny programs every day and is able to recite chapter and verse and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, I have a life. I do not eat, sleep, drink, and breathe Jack, 24 hours a day. In fact, somebody who did not declare themselves president of my fan club, quite the opposite, was very angry because they were demanding a 24-hour hotline to the Jack Benny fan club so that they could always call and get what it's like. Oh, I can't. You don't want me to say what I was saying at that time. It's like
No.
expletive. Yeah. It's like no. You need to get a life. Not to emulate William Shatner or anything. So it's like, okay, when somebody has put you on a pedestal, somebody, God bless them, I remember who it was. It's a longtime member of the fan club, came up to me at a radio convention, and it was the first radio convention I'd ever attended, and it was strange because I could stand anywhere. In fact, I was trying to get into the bathroom one time, and this queue of people would just instantly form, of people like standing waiting to talk to me. And I just was not expecting that.
Yeah.
And it happened over and over and over and over. And it could happen any time of the day. And it was like, why do you all want to talk to me? I mean, it's nice. It's a nice compliment, don't think I don't appreciate it, but it's just like,
right.
Why it's not about me, it's about Jack. And so I said that to somebody, and Sean looks at me and says, "Why don't you get it? You're a legend." I'm like, "No, I don't know about that." It's like, again, I appreciate the respect, and I don't mean to denigrate it in any way, but so it's like, okay, when you have that kind of attention, you're not quite used to it, and you're wondering why people are doing it. Then I turn it on myself and say, okay, let's say that there is a Laura Leibowitz fan club, and that my life is being put under the microscope. It's like, I'm going to go. I'm going to go become a Buddhist monk and shave my head and live on a mountain in Bhutan. It's like, no, I wouldn't want that. So I try to be conscious about that in approaching Jack as well, because I could totally see this database. In fact, Kathy Fuller-Seeley, when she was here, I just kind of casually pulled the contents of a file that I had and just put it in her hand and just watched her jaw drop as she went page over page, because Dottie Oman, Jack's secretary, had for like 10 years a day-by-day schedule of where Jack was and what he was doing. And yeah, I mean, imagine for any of us having somebody tracking what we were doing, on a day-by-day basis like that. It's like, that's a little scary. And so, I'm always trying to find that balance with Jack of like, okay, yeah, we may be able to figure that out, but if we wouldn't want it done to us, should we be doing it to somebody else? I don't know. I'm still wrestling with that. So
that's really cool, though, and it's like, sure, you're a historian's dream with that. I'm sure that's what Kathy was like. Wow, like, oh wow, that is really cool, though.
Tech is helpful when somebody says to me, "Hey, when where was he on this date?" And I can pull it up and generally find out.
You could you would be the best person to do this day in Jack Benny. Like, I know there's that podcast, but like, you could, that would be great to, like, you could actually have something for each day. That's awesome.
Yeah, on this date in 1946, well, I don't know, we're in August, and he was probably in in Europe with the USO show. So,
Wow.
in 1952, he was in Korea or whatever. Yeah. So.
That's cool.
Yeah, we'll get there.
So you were saying, like, you do have a life outside of Jack Benny. What are some of your other interests?
Well, I have a long-standing joke that I'm the rarest of animals. I'm a female Jewish Irish tenor. So I sing with the San Francisco Bach Choir, and have sung with other ensembles in this area. So I love that. Pretty much every week I go to the symphony. It's Jack loved the symphony, and I do too, and know a lot of the musicians there. And I bought another plot of land where I'm building my own organic garden, and I'm a frustrated artist. Well, you're on my Facebook group, as a friend, so you've seen my door project and my tiles and so forth. Just finding opportunities, outlets for creativity there. And today, after we get done, I'm going to be converting a Silvertone floor radio that somebody gave me that really needs some TLC, but I'm converting it into a rolling table for my compound miter saw. And so I guess that's kind of crossover with Jack, because God knows the radio probably played Jack at some point. And I work with a rabbit rescue. I have 6 bunnies of my own, and I'm working with a couple of medical rescues right now who need some special attention and healing and so forth. So, and I love to cook. I've done recipe development and that's probably and more things as they come up. I have a magnet on my fridge that says, "Did you ever notice that what the hell is always the right decision?" And I had the opportunity to be an extra in a Taylor Mac video one time, so I put on my Mae West outfit and went down to San Francisco in the early morning hours and when they were shooting, and ended up in Rolling Stone magazine, with that. Obviously the focus was Taylor Mac, but you can certainly pick me out of the video. Right. So, just weird stuff like that comes up, and it's like, oh yeah, what the hell? Okay, let's do that. That'll be interesting. And I love traveling. I've been to Bhutan, I've been to Cuba, and I'm hoping to get to Tehran, but have to carefully measure the political times with that. Going at the right time. So anyhow, but yeah, I have a lot of living to do. So
I saw on your Facebook page that you're also a fan of Doctor Who. So I don't want to die off of like Benny too much, but like this is all of the classics. Do you like classic Who?
Oh yeah. Patrick Troughton's my favorite Doctor.
Oh my gosh, do you know the guy, what's his name? It's Christopher Thompson, and he does voice work as Patrick Troughton.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Well,
how cool.
He's fantastic. My favorite Doctor is probably Sylvester McCoy. I know most people really... Yes, people kind of like hate on him, but because like the series ended soon after him, but I don't think that was his fault. He was working with the scripts they gave him, which were not that great, and but his physical comedy and his actual I just love his era because Ace is amazing, and yes, the plots are hokey, but he does a great job.
Yeah, I have to admit that I just did not gel with that era, but I totally respect that you do. In fact, if you look on the Jack Benny page, there's an Easter egg for Doctor Who fans. I think this is right. If it's not right, let me know. jackbenny.org/dw.htm. And I've done this thing where I align actors. I didn't do Christopher Eccleston. I didn't do Rats. What's the name of the guy? I've even been in the same room with him. Who did the TV movie? It was right after Sylvester McCoy.
Oh, Paul McGann.
Paul McGann. Thank you. I've been away from Doctor Who for a little bit, so
yeah, I'm kind of taking a break from it.
Yeah, same here, and it's kind of funny because I actually did watch one of the more recent episodes because a member of the fan club was in it. He's an actor in England, but yeah, I didn't do Paul McGann, but I stopped at Sylvester McCoy, and for whatever it's worth to you, I matched him up with Edward Everett Horton. And when you take a look at the pictures of the two of them next to each other, it's like, whoa, there is a similarity there. So
I can see that, yeah. I am a fan of Peter Capaldi, the 12th Doctor, because...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Because he was in a band with Craig Ferguson, and I love Craig Ferguson. I'm a huge Craig Ferguson fan. By the way...
Last night on a game show of some kind that he seems to be hosting now.
Yeah, no, I don't think he's hosting that anymore. I think they just do reruns. They canceled that one, I believe. But for anybody that cares about Craig Ferguson, he's going to be in Waukegan, I believe, in October. So.
No crap! What at the
Genesee?
Genesee?
Mm-hmm.
Doing what? Just stand up?
Yeah, he's I believe it's for his hobo tour or something like that.
Yeah. Oh, how cool!
Yeah, I was like, well, I might have to go to, like, I've been wanting to go to Waukegan, and I like Craig Ferguson, so I might have to do that. But,
well, and you're not that far away. All you gotta do is drive around.
I'm not, but, like, I just haven't made that trip.
Mm-hmm. Have you seen the inside of the Genesee?
I have not. No.
Oh, you gotta see it. They've done a really good job with it. Because I actually, back in '87, got to tour the Genesee, which was at that time boarded up. But it just so happened that the travel lodge that I was staying at, that the owners of that also owned the Genesee Theater, and so there were things that they had in there. They do you remember what do the name Siskel and Ebert mean anything to you?
Say that again.
Siskel and Ebert, Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Film critics. Mm-hmm. Well, when they first started on television, I think it was called At the Movies, and their weekly critical review of movies. They shot the opening to it in the Genesee Theater when it was closed, and so they came in and just had done little touches, to like putting colored cardboard on the snack bar just to be able to make it shoot a little bit better, and there's a thing where it says balcony closed, and you see them sneaking up into the balcony. I'm sure it's got to be on YouTube somewhere. It's worth looking up.
That's cool.
And yeah, so anyhow, that's where they shot it. So I got to see this poor, rundown, shell of its former self, Genesee Theater, which had been painted in salmon pink and stuff that just didn't work. And then of them getting the chandelier back, the chandelier in the main entrance has a story that it just kind of like disappeared one night, and it's an awfully large chandelier to disappear one night and then reappeared in a theater in Chicago. It's like, wonder how that happened.
Yeah.
But they replaced it, and just have done a really beautiful job with the place. So yeah, you've got to see it just for the sake of seeing the Genesee. That's and where cool. Man About Town had its world premiere.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
that's kind of big for. I mean, like I said, I haven't been to Waukegan, but it doesn't seem to be like the biggest of cities.
It's certainly not. And in fact, the debut of Man About Town was one of the biggest things that ever hit Waukegan.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, there's, in fact, Mike Rudolph, Jack's oldest grandson, has this wonderful front page from the Waukegan, was it the Waukegan News Sun? I can't remember if it was the News Sun back then. But just of all these throngs of people in town and, their own Hollywood style premiere, yeah. And Jack of course did one of his radio shows from there.
That's cool.
Yeah, so he and Ray Bradbury really put Waukegan on the map. So.
Yes. So you talked a little bit about, I know that this seems off subject, but I'm going to bring it back to Benny.
Okay.
So how many bunnies do you have?
Well, right now I have 8. There are 6 of my own and 2 fosters.
Oh, that's cool. Do they have any Jack Benny themed names?
Oh, no.
No.
No, some of them I keep the name that they came with, but okay. No, they tend to name themselves. I have a little op named Snuffy, and his girlfriend's name is Shmoo. I mean, I suppose that draws from Little Abner because she looks like a shmoo. A shmoo with rabbit ears. And, and Sarasvati is the wife of Brahma, so that's very much not Jack Benny related. And then one of them's named after Ralph Vaughan Williams, the composer. And his girlfriend has gone through a few different names, but she's ended up with Queen Fuzzy Pants. So... No Jack Benny related names on the rabbits.
All right. So I was looking kind of more like Facebook stalking you and found that you like the...
You were not the first one.
And found that you like the Jack Kitty program. What is the Jack Kitty program?
Oh, you gotta ask Amy about that. Yeah, because she well, it's funny that you asked me right then because she has a few cats named after, Jack Benny characters. And so Jack the cat, she was thinking of doing a Jack Kitty program and asked me about it before she did. I'm like, yeah, whatever, it's Facebook. Go, go in good health, as Schlepperman might say. And, so, I would have to defer to Amy Flanagan for more information on that. But she did have a kitten that she wanted to name Mary. And I said, is it a kitten with attitude? She said, no, she's really sweet. I said, name her Gracie.
Yeah.
And she did.
Yeah. That's really cool. I am interested in that. That sounds like a fun project. With all this stuff that you have, with Jack Benny, you said you're gonna start, the database. Have you thought about, donating some things to, a museum, possibly?
Oh, yeah. No, I've actually got it set up in my will. I hopefully don't have to use that will for a very long time. But all the Jack Benny stuff is going to, right now it's going to either the Boston Public Library, because I know that they were looking to build out their comedy collection, or the American Heritage Center in Wyoming, because they have some of Jack's papers and have been delightful in supporting my research. So
that's very amazing. So that's cool. I was wondering, now this is not something you probably want to comment on, but what can you tell me about this situation with Les Moonves, the president of CBS, not releasing the Benny tapes? How did that what is that predicament even?
Well, it's basically that I had information on what tapes CBS had in the vault. And so I had approached them, not Les Moonves directly. Especially based on more recent news, I'm glad that I haven't had any direct contact with him. But dealing with their legal department for basically a year and saying, hey, we'd like to pull these tapes out and restore them and whatnot, and please just give us access, and we'll pay for everything. And round and round and round with their legal department, and round and round and round, and calling every week and so forth. And finally, their legal department just said, look, we don't know what's involved in these, and even if we did, we wouldn't do it anyway. Oh, well, so there, snap. And so I just, at that point, I was so frustrated that I had wasted so much time on it, that I just sent out a communique to the members. And then really, I have to credit them because they took it from there. Mm-hmm. And somebody else started the Tell Les Moonves to release CBS, release the CBS tapes petition and so forth. And in fact, a few years later, I was on the phone with a VP at CBS, and somebody had connected me with, and he said, why are you going around telling everybody that Les Moonves is a bad person? It's like, I never said that. It's other people have said that because they're frustrated with him. But, honestly, everything that CBS has in their inventory that I'm aware of, I've been able to get copies from other sources. Mm-hmm. So there's nothing yet that is quote unquote locked away in there. And in fact, I'm gobsmacked at the fact that the Jack Benny TV series is as complete as it is. In fact, when I was writing Volume 3 of 39 Forever, UCLA stumbled across or got a donation that included one of the 3 episodes that I considered lost. Mm. And
what episodes? What episodes were those?
There's one that's earlier that I can't even remember what the storyline is of it. The one that they found is Jack redecorating his house. It's not a great episode. It's one of those later episodes, but still, it's like, okay, if it was out there, let's see it. And the other episode, I still haven't seen the whole thing, but I know it's out there because it's got Sammy Davis Jr. as a guest star, and I've seen that clip. Mm-hmm. Where Sammy Davis Jr. comes in. He doesn't even do, he just comes in and does this one bit and then leaves. So it isn't one of these things where, like Carol Burnett, and then you have a Tarzan, skit in the second half or something, that he comes out and does this bit where he's like, wow, I remember, my mom telling me about seeing you in vaudeville, and you'd come out and you'd sing, and then Sammy Davis Jr. sings, and then you run over and you play the drums, and he runs over and plays the drums and whatnot. And Jack is standing there, with his palms open, like, but, and, finally, after Sammy Davis Jr. goes through all of these things, and then, but that still wasn't enough. You had to wow him with your dance, and he dances. And it's like, but Sammy, I never did any of that, and I can't even remember what the punchline was. It was like, oh, you must have been boring, or something, like that. And he just walks off. And there's a French, or the source on it is French, so I think the tape must be somewhere in France, either that or who knows anymore. But I know the show is out there, and one day we will find it.
That's cool. Sorry to interrupt you earlier.
Oh, no. I'm sorry if I stepped on you.
No, you're fine. So has anything changed with, like, I guess you said, like, pretty much everything is available. Is there anything that CBS has that you haven't seen on the shows that are running on Antenna?
Oh yeah, no, there's plenty of shows that aren't on antenna, and I don't even know if I have the most recent inventory of the shows that they're running, but I know approximately the syndication package, like all the stuff that we put in the lost episodes. I don't think that's something that's included in the antenna TV package. Um, but yeah, and there are a few shows just to tantalize everybody that I have copies of, but I was given copies of under the promise that I wouldn't release them for a certain period of time. Um, so I'm honoring that commitment. Now I have shown a couple of them in the monthly chats because I figure, okay, I'll put it up there and then I'll take it down right after, and I haven't actually distributed it to anybody. Um, so, but so there's stuff out there. Some of it you have to actually go to UCLA to sit there and watch. And sadly, in the 64-65 season, there are some episodes that I've watched where I was just yelling at the television screen because they were so bad. It's like, no, don't, oh God,
Yeah.
So, watching Jack crawl around on all fours in a cat suit, and lapping milk out of a bowl. It's like, oh.
Interesting.
Yeah, that doesn't work.
No, doesn't sound like it.
Nope.
You found Jack after his radio days. What made you fall in love with him? I know you said that there was that cartoon. Was there anything about it that just made you interested in him?
That's an excellent question. I wish I had a good answer for you. Um, it's funny because the story that I told you earlier. How's this for a confession? Is mostly true, but I've also made that into a show business story, and tied it into a nice package, and that all makes sense. Um, and the actual truth is that, but it's also that I resaw the mouse that Jack built later, and I remember the next day I was standing at my bus stop. I was in 8th grade, and my somebody was talking about a teacher, and I said, "Oh yeah, she looks like Mortimer Snerd." And all these other kids turn to me and say, "Who's Mortimer Snerd?" And I just kind of automatically struck that Jack pose, hand on the face, tucked onto my arm. Yeah, it's like, and kind of stared off like, can you believe these people? And I can't tell you what connected the wiring. I sometimes, when I'm in a more honest mood, as I apparently am right now, it's almost like a finger came out of the sky and touched the top of my head and said, "You will be the Jack Benny girl." And everything just kind of hooked up at that moment. And that was the first day. And I came home from school and told my parents that story that I just told you about, Mortimer Snerd. And I said, and then I did a Jack Benny.
Yeah.
And yeah, my mom, who had sat me down in front of the second farewell special when I was 3, and loved to tell the story of, after about 30 seconds, I ran out of the room bored, and she said, "Well, no Jack Benny fan here, okay." Was like, "What? You did a what?" "I did a Jack Benny." "You did a what?" And then she had the Publishers Central Bureau catalog open. She said, "Are you interested in anything here?" I said, "Yeah, do they have any Jack Benny?" And she just looks at me like, "What the hell's wrong with you?" Where did this come from?
Right.
I mean, she was a huge Jack Benny fan. My father was not. So, it wasn't that she didn't understand someone appreciating Jack. She just didn't understand me appreciating Jack. And yeah, it just, the I can't explain it. Just one day I became the Jack Benny girl, and that's actually the honest to God truth story. And you see why I don't tell it, because it doesn't make any sense, and I can't explain it. So there it is.
I get that. I've fallen in love with a number of different classic stars, like Gene Kelly and Dean Martin. I was known as those two people. That's who I obsessed over in high school, and
yeah.
So they were like, "You're the girl that has crushes on dead people." Like that. That was me.
Oh, been there, done that. Oh
yeah. Yeah. That's who I became. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
My parents were like really happy when who was it? Steve Martin. Like when I fell in love with Steve Martin, because they were like, at least he's living. He looks much older than you, but he's living.
Well, and it's an interesting thing. I'm curious on your thoughts about this. That a lot of people talk about, we're going to get into sociological study, and we should get Kathy on here and have a three-way conversation about this.
Oh man, I love it.
Well, maybe we should work on that.
Yeah.
That it's often said that you had, the studio system in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and so forth, and so you had people like Clark Gable and Tyrone Power and Marlon Brando and Spencer Tracy and et cetera and so on. And they all have this kind of yang about them. And the women as well. You have the ones that are more in pardon the term, more category, like Joan Crawford and Betty Davis and so forth, and then you have the Vivian Lees, who I guess also qualifies for that, and the Olivia de Havillands and the Judy Garlands and so forth, and so you have this kind of aura about them. Mm-hmm. And then when you get into the 60s, you kind of get more into the anti-hero, and people who are more like Dustin Hoffman, who don't kind of come across with that same aura to them. Yeah. A lot of people credit that to the fall of the studio system. You still have some like Gene Hackman, that kind of go into the 70s and so forth, but there's a certain softening of kind of the male image. And I almost wonder, it's like when you say Gene Kelly and Dean Martin, when I think of them, it's like they both had yang, and Gene Kelly even more so than Fred Astaire, because Fred Astaire is kind of, wispy in his own way, and I'm not saying that in an effeminate kind of way, but, right. He doesn't have quite the same quality of yang that Gene Kelly does. And, I wonder if there isn't even, Jack, like I said, Kathy has a whole chapter in her book on this, because Jack is somewhere in between there. But, if there isn't something that is just kind of quintessentially attractive about that image that was, portrayed back then. What are your thoughts on that?
I think so, in some way. I mean, Gene Kelly was a big fighter of the studio system, though, and Dean Martin kind of came in around a little bit in the middle, I think, because I don't like his stuff, like, in the studio system, but more so with the Rat Pack and, so I like seeing his live performances, that's on YouTube and stuff, so that's more of what I like, and I think I guess the Rat Pack was really kind of, I guess, what made them more attractive, and I guess that this is spitballing here, because I haven't really thought about this, but they kind of created their own studio system, because they were this group of people that crafted their own image, and I don't think Dean necessarily was a part of, like, in reality, that image, but by association, he was. And so, I think
But
that
if you
was...
look like the entire Rat Pack, I mean, and I don't mean to equate Yang image with the studio system, but I think they did contribute to it in the past, of like making Clark Gable into what he was. You know, I think of him as kind of like one of the ultimate figures of that. But Sinatra and Lawford and Sammy Davis Jr. and Dean Martin, you know, when you think of any of these guys, now of course Frank Sinatra had this nasty habit of punching women, but you know, which is very Yang, but not in a way that I like. But yeah, they all kind of have this, you know, wonderful, stylish, masculine quality to them that I think you'd be really hard pressed to find it today, except in somebody like George Clooney.
Yeah, George Clooney, and I don't know why, but when you first said, like, the studio system Yang, I thought of Tom Hanks, even though he doesn't really have, like, Yang, he's that star presence, and, sort of like unsaid Hollywood royalty, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, even like when I think of Brad Pitt or anything, not cutting him down, but he's a pretty boy, you know, and Leonardo DiCaprio.
Yeah.
I saw him in Titanic, and I thought he was a punk, but you know, he's gotten to be a much more, you know, depth of talent actor. But again, he's a pretty boy, you know, and it's.
You notice since he won his Oscar, you haven't seen him in anything.
Oh, really? Okay.
I haven't. So I don't know. That was the thing. Every year, all the girls would gather around the screen and be like, is this the year he's going to win the Oscar? And, like... Yeah, and he just kept taking more intense roles. Like, you're like, surely he's going to win it this year. He took, like, this crazy role, right? So... Mm-hmm. And he finally won it, and I haven't seen him.
Yeah, he won the Oscar for J. Edgar Hoover, didn't he?
No, I think his first one was the I forget what it was called, but he, like, was out in the wild and, like lived inside a bear or something.
Relevant or Revelant or something like that?
Yeah, something like that, yeah. He won for that, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, well, I mean, God bless him for taking heavier and heavier roles, you know, to be able to also, you know, just improve his quality of craft. It's like as a singer that you take on harder and harder songs to be able to develop different aspects of your voice. So.
I gotta say, I really respect, like, from the stories that I've heard about him, like, I really respect that he seems to be genuine, and he really does support, like, wildlife charities, and, like, that's pretty much all his, like, if you look on his social media, that's pretty much, like, all his social media is like, he makes a lot of environmental talks.
Hallelujah. Yeah. That's great. You know, that he can use his celebrity to support causes like that. That's excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't mean to just, like, dump on Leonardo DiCaprio. Boy, talk about being off topic. Yeah, because I have not seen his more recent stuff, but I have been told by many people that he's certainly getting, you know, better at his work. So, and I respect that. That's great, you know. So, anywho.
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of funny because, you know, I think of George Clooney and like, Cary Grant and Rock Hudson.
Yeah.
They had the, you know, it's like, okay, Cary Grant and Arsenic and Old Lace does not have the Yang, you know.
Yeah.
There's a body in the window seat.
Right. For the men, I feel like the studio system really, like, worked for the men, but for the girls, I don't think it worked at all. I think it was, you know, you get, like, sob stories like Judy Garland, and, it's just, it was too intense for that, and, it's just, it's not a way of, like, rapidly losing weight. Like it was more scrutiny on the women and their weight, and then they would be too tired, and then like all that. So, that's it did. I don't think they had as much star power because like people still, know Clark Gable. I feel like more than they would know. Like can't even think. Betty Davis, I know that's not really a great example because I feel like people have at least heard of Betty Davis, but I don't know. It's just, I don't really think of, maybe this is just because I'm a girl, I don't really think of the women as much from the studio era.
And probably part of the problem, I would bet, would be just what they felt would be accepted from women at that time. It's just, I saw one of the members posted this gorgeous poster from Johnny Guitar. Have you seen Johnny Guitar?
I have not.
Okay, it stars Joan Crawford, and basically it's like a Western turned on its head. Where all the men are a little more passive, and basically it's the women in charge, and so Joan Crawford's a gunslinger and so forth. And in this country, my understanding is that it did not do very well, because people just didn't know how to process it. But I'm told that in Europe, people immediately got it. And that it was way more popular over there. So, there are only so many strong, meaty female roles that you can have at that time. Because the studio system is automatically going to have women be, more feminine and more submissive and more, whatever, and more pretty. So I think, I'm trying to think of some of the, Garbo, look at her, that she had some really strong female roles, but she fought like hell for those.
Yeah.
And then finally, she just said, look, I don't need this anymore, and just kind of retired and wanted to be alone, as it were. But yeah, you have like the Jean Harlows and so forth. And don't get me wrong, I love Jean Harlow. But actually, I'm just remembering, what's the Marilyn Monroe film where she's the babysitter? I think it's Don't Bother to Knock.
Oh God, I don't know. I don't think I've seen that one.
Oh, you got to see that, because it is Marilyn Monroe during her Strasbourg period. She plays, not to, try to avoid a spoiler alert, but she plays a baddie. And it's really fascinating to see, 7-Year Itch, Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, Marilyn Monroe, playing a surprisingly heavy role. And so again, props to her for being able to seek out that kind of role and actually bringing it to fruition.
Yes.
Talk about breaking characters. So, anywho, Jack who?
Yeah.
Benny?
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, you get the female roles like Charlie's aunt, and Jack gets those.
Charlie's aunt. Oh, wow. This has been very interesting, and I would like to have a talk with you and Kathy together, because that would be a very interesting conversation.
It was funny. We were both here in the house and on the chat together, and she was in the other room, and I was here in the office, and stuff's coming up on the chat, and we're just yelling back and forth of like, hey, what year was that, or whatever. So it's lovely to be able to share that. So
that's awesome. So, final question: how would you sell young people on Jack Benny?
I think if you actually tried to sell them on Jack, it wouldn't work. you got to hear it. You got to experience it. I think I might put like Buck Benny Rides Again, in front of them, because that's really like a movie version of a radio show, or one of the quintessential radio shows, and just give them a couple of character traits, like, okay, Jack is cheap, he doesn't like spending money, and then play the 50 Cent show that everybody loves so much. Jack gives a bum 50 cents with Frank Fontaine, and and it's like, okay, either they'll get it or they won't.
Yeah.
And, if they don't, then okay, but, for people of exquisite taste such as yourself, then, it's like, okay, you at least plant the seed, and, if they want to see more, then thank God there's plenty on YouTube out there, and, there's the fan club and the Facebook group, and, we have all the Jack Benny to ODU as much as you'd like.
Yes, you get plenty of Jack Benny on that Facebook group. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and I try to. You had mentioned about the moderators posting, once a year or so.
Yeah.
Somebody, fortunately, I think this only happened once, but even for the once, it just really stuck with me that somebody said, "Oh, you've made this all about you," not the Facebook group, but the club. And it was in response to a newsletter. Yeah, I know. Like I said, I should just ignore this one, but I try to keep it in mind. That it's not about me, it's about Jack. You heard me say that earlier. Yeah. And so, I try not to be too much in the forefront of that group. And, like when somebody asked, how much older is Jack than Mary? I'm like, somebody there will know that. Yeah. Let them answer it. And again, it's about spreading the fun around, and it's not, I may be the admin of the Facebook group, but if we didn't have any members, then it'd be pretty darn boring. So it's really about, it's about the gang, it's about the family of folks that we have there, and all the wonderful stuff, like yourself, that you bring to the table, and I think Jack will be proud of all of you.
Yeah. I feel like there's a couple of people on the fan group that are like even like sons and like daughters of people that were on the show. I believe Rochester's daughter is on it, and when I was out in LA, I stayed at the Rochester estate.
Did you now?
Yeah.
I haven't seen the inside. Oh, I'm jealous. Excellent.
Yeah.
So tell us about it.
I mean, it's very nice. It's, as you probably know, it's a can't think, not Airbnb, it's a hostel. It's a hostel now. And,
okay.
Yeah, and so there's like the part where they actually lived is sort of like the commons area, and then I think there's there's an upstairs, and not very much that's open, I felt like, to like the public, but it would be I want to go again, because I was told that his son comes like almost every day, but every single day I was there, he wasn't there, and he was he kept like missing his flight or whatever, and I was like, bang my head against the wall. No. I do need to post. I want to post like a video of my stay there, because I mean, of course I specifically chose it because Jack Benny. I think they were like, they said like, you're the first person that's come here that has actually come here to like see the history of it. Everybody
Dang.
else. I mean,
Okay.
it's really cheap, so like most people aren't interested in the history behind it. It's just a place to stay. Well, this has been a fantastic talk. I'd love to talk some more, but let's wrap things up there, I guess.
Yeah,
So
on that
I've been
note.
talking to you for, it says, an hour. If you see me keep looking, I'm just like, wow, I've been talking to you for an hour and 30 minutes, and I'm not bored, I'm just sitting here talking.
It's been a freewheeling discussion, but yeah, I'm sure that you will edit judiciously. So
Yes, yeah. I don't know how much I'm a big proponent of keeping a lot of stuff in,
okay.
but probably
Yeah,
about
make
the
sure
last 10
like,
minutes maybe, because we've just been rambling.
Since it's been kind of free flowing, it's like, okay, Doctor Who, what does this have to do with Jack Benny?
Right, it's all of the classics. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Or talking about masculinity in the studio system and so forth. But yeah, no, actually, you'd be surprised how much crossover there is between Doctor Who and Jack Benny. I've found a lot of people that love both. I can't necessarily explain why. I just know it is. So
good quality. Just people like good quality.
Hallelujah. Take care.
Thank you so much for listening. I will be posting some of the links about what we talked about here on my YouTube and on my website, alloftheclassics.blogspot.com, and on my Tumblr, All of the Classics. I'd like to thank Laura for being so generous with her time. Please remember to subscribe, leave a review, or a comment. It really helps. If you're interested in a free Doctor Who comic, reach out to me on Twitter @TrueHopeSeers or Instagram True Travels of Hope. Again, thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch you later. This has been a Hope Seers presentation, darling.